everybody. Welcome to the Game Before the Money podcast, celebrating pro and college football history. This episode, Baltimore Ravens center Matt Birk talks about the journey to Super Bowl 47 and the Mile High Miracle. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Game Before the Money podcast, celebrating pro and college football history. I'm Jackson Michael, author of The Game Before the Money, Voices of the Men Who Built the NFL. That's available at Amazon.com. Getting into more recent history than we usually do here with Matt Birk, talking about the Baltimore Ravens' journey to Super Bowl 47, and you'll gain an appreciation for why I chose that word journey later in the show. And you'll also gain some deep insight from Matt Birk into winning championships, and you can keep that in mind as you watch this year's playoffs and playoffs in the years to come. Matt Birk started at center for the Ravens in Super Bowl 47. It was his fourth season with the Ravens. Previously, he had played with the Minnesota Vikings for 10 seasons. He made the Pro Bowl 6 times and won the very revered Walter Payton Man of the Year award. I recently found an interview that I did with Matt Birk a few years ago. We discussed leadership and character in football, and Matt shared many gems about that subject, as well as the Ravens' path to Super Bowl 47 and the Mile High Miracle. And I thought his insight would be great for you to hear on the Game Before the Money podcast. The Mile High Miracle was a 70-yard touchdown pass from Ravens quarterback Joe Flacco to receiver Jacoby Jones with under a minute left in regulation to tie a 2012 AFC divisional playoff game at Denver. The Ravens kicked a field goal to win in the second overtime, and they defeated the Broncos on the road en route to winning Super Bowl 47 over the San Francisco 49ers. Now, just to share a personal memory of the Mile High Miracle, I was living in Austin, Texas at the time, and was meeting some friends downtown to watch the upcoming Packers-49ers playoff game that was played that night. I drove downtown with the Broncos-Ravens game on the radio, and just as I was getting to the sports bar, I heard the Mile High Miracle happen on the radio. I parked my car as quickly as possible and frantically ran to catch the replay. Well, when I returned to my car later that night, I learned that the city had just installed parking meters at the location that I had parked at, and I had gotten a parking ticket. So for me, when somebody mentions the Mile High Miracle, a lot of times I think about parking tickets. It's funny how the mind works that way. In all seriousness, though, Matt's story is really going to give you a lot of great things to look for as you watch the playoffs this season and from here on out. He'll also share some things with you that he learned playing football that you can apply to your life and career. Matt came to the Ravens in 2009, and they lost to the Colts in the divisional round that year. In 2010, they lost to Pittsburgh in the divisional round as the Steelers scored the game-winning touchdown with a minute and a half left in a game that the Ravens had once led by 2 touchdowns. So in Birk's first 2 seasons with the Ravens, they had won 2 wildcard games by hefty margins, only to fall short in the divisional round. Baltimore won their divisional title the next year in 2011. They beat the Houston Texans in the AFC divisional playoffs and traveled to Gillette Stadium to play the New England Patriots in the 2011 AFC Championship game. The Ravens lost a hard-fought game at New England that they led going into the fourth quarter. The final score was 23-20. Baltimore had climbed the ladder upward each of those seasons, but still couldn't reach the ultimate destination. I remember watching many of those games and listening to the AFC Championship game against New England on the radio, and you could just feel the heartbreak that the Ravens must have felt. They were always in the mix, but suffered some really tough defeats. I asked Matt Birk about how the team fought through the disappointment. Before 2012, you guys had a lot of great seasons, but you never seemed to press through in the playoffs. You guys would always come up a little bit short. What do you think was kind of the leadership on the team that pressed you guys through?
I think it's just kind of that persistence. You're right. We're right on the doorstep every year. I think it's pretty remarkable how the Ravens are pretty good, that they have a legitimate chance year in and year out. But we got close 3-4 years in a row. It was a concerted effort. All the leaders on the team, starting with our head coach and all the veteran players, just not letting guys get discouraged, making guys see the big picture, that every year is judged by its own merits. But we would look at it as a process. I mean, that the core of that team was intact year after year after year, and we just took what we could from our successes and definitely our failures in the playoffs and just used it to get better. Never felt sorry for ourselves, never deterred. Certainly some of those losses really stung, but we had our eye on the prize. We believed in each other. We believed in how we were going about doing it, how we were trying to win the Super Bowl. And so, we'd lose those games, it would sting, and then we'd just say, all right, let's get back to work and let's keep after it. And, we just had a faith that sooner or later it would pay off and we'd break through, and we did.
That answer and his answer to my next question really opened my eyes to another way of viewing championships and success. It's why I use the word journey in the title of this podcast. So it sounds like to me that even when you would lose in the AFC Championship, even that you guys saw as part of the process, and it wasn't really necessarily the be-all, end-all of the run?
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of thought, there's a reason for this. Okay, we lost. It stung. Let's use it and get better. Again, that starts with the head coach. John Harbaugh's got great perspective with that, but we had a lot of veterans too. Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, myself, Derek Mason, Terrell Suggs. Guys who've been around a long time and kind of understood how this thing works. It's not really about the result, but more about the process and just preparing the right way. And then when it is game day, leaving everything you have on the field. And that's about it. That's really all you can control. Again, not to say we weren't disappointed after we lost those games, we were. But, you got to understand what you can feel badly about. And you can be mad that you lost and mad that your season's over and mad because not everybody's going to come back to the team the next year. But you can't control the entire off season and how hard you work and how you get prepared and what kind of attitude you bring back the following season.
What I found really enlightening there was getting the sense that John Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens didn't necessarily see a Super Bowl championship as a single season by single season kind of endeavor. It might be a journey that lasts several seasons. Losing in the divisional round to the Steelers, part of the process of getting to the Super Bowl. Having Tom Brady engineer a fourth quarter touchdown drive to beat you in the AFC Championship game, that's part of the journey. They kept building and climbing one year to the next, rather than looking at a playoff loss as a failure that couldn't be resolved by winning the next year. And we've seen and heard this before on The Game Before the Money. In the book, The Game Before the Money, Walt Garrison talked about how the Dallas Cowboys' loss in Super Bowl V helped propel them to winning Super Bowl VI over the Miami Dolphins. And Dolphin quarterback Bob Greasy talked about how that loss in Super Bowl VI helped inspire the team's undefeated 1972 season. And on the podcast, we just had Boyd Dowler of the Green Bay Packers share a story about what Vince Lombardi said after the Packers lost the 1960 NFL championship game and how those words motivated the Packers in championship games in the future. And when I talked to Baltimore Colts legend Raymond Berry on the Texas Sports Hall of Fame podcast, he talked about how the 1957 season and how that season finished helped lift the Colts to championships in 1958 and 1959. So this process that Matt Birk was talking about, this journey to a championship seems to be something that even the Packers in the 1960s, the Cowboys in the 70s, the Dolphins in the 70s, the Colts in the 50s, it seems like these championship teams might have a common thread in how they persisted through disappointments from a previous season and used those moments as stepping stones to attaining an NFL title in a future season, rather than looking at it as the door being shut and locked completely and the chance for an NFL championship simply vanishing into thin air based on one season. It seems like all of these teams had a broader view about what it takes to win an NFL title. On the other hand, sometimes you see very talented teams get close, but they can't win the biggest games. Then you see teams like the Ravens who find a way to get over the hump. Matt Birk sharing how the Ravens viewed things really opened my eyes as to all that went into their championship in Super Bowl 47 and how that team persevered through the types of playoff losses that stopped a lot of very good teams from getting to a Super Bowl. Losing in the playoffs might have stopped a few of the Ravens' seasons, but it didn't stop their Super Bowl journey. They kept moving on through the process of achieving the ultimate goal. I mentioned to Matt that I thought that that was a great lesson that one could apply to life and not just football. He responded with some more great insights.
Another thing that football teaches you is, good things happen, bad things happen. You kind of got to take them both in stride. Keep going is business as usual. Especially when you lose, I guess, publicly, people are really looking to see how you respond. But I think it's probably a little bit more dangerous when you win or when you have success, because everyone's patting you on the back and everyone's kind of giving you permission to sort of admire your work. We were just never like that. Whether you win or lose one week to the next, it's not a reason to pop champagne bottles, and it's not a reason to hang your head. You understand the season's long, there's ups and downs, and you have to believe in what you're doing, you have to believe in how you're doing, you have to believe in the guys you're with, and we had those things.
The Ravens won the AFC North Division again in 2012. They didn't earn a first-round bye, but the Ravens cruised to a 24-9 win against the Colts in the divisional round. The team traveled to Denver the following week for an AFC divisional playoff against the Broncos. Now, to refresh your memory, 2012 was Peyton Manning's first year with the Broncos. Denver had an 11-game winning streak going into the divisional playoff game and finished the season with the best record in the AFC. Plus, of course, the Broncos are known for being tough at home in the mile-high air of the Rocky Mountains. So the Ravens and quarterback Joe Flacco faced a stiff challenge at Denver. Baltimore stayed stride by stride with the Broncos, however. The teams were tied at 14 at the end of the first quarter, tied at 21 at the end of the first half, and at the end of the third quarter, the game was tied at 28. Peyton Manning hit Demaryius Thomas for a 17-yard touchdown midway through the fourth quarter to give the Broncos a 35-28 lead. The Ravens' last chance came in the last minute of regulation. They faced a 3rd and 3 from their own 30 with 43 seconds left. The Broncos rushed 3 and had 8 men in coverage. Flacco stepped up in the pocket and launched a ball deep down the sidelines to Jacoby Jones.
The Baltimore Ravens have just tied the AFC divisional playoff with a remarkable 70-yard touchdown from Joe Flacco to Jacoby Jones. Denver's secondary coverage broke down along the left sideline, and Flacco threw a perfect strike that Jones caught in stride and ran untouched into the end zone. We're headed into overtime here in Denver as a mile-high miracle has brought hope to the Ravens' Super Bowl dream.
I asked Matt Birk about what it was like in the Ravens huddle before the play, and his answer gave insight into that team's mentality and the focus on the task at hand.
Joe's the perfect out there down by 7, and I had a minute left, had to go the length of the field. It was never like, oh, geez, we got to do this, or guys, we're going to lose. It was just like, what's the play? Okay, that's the play. Here's my assignment. Let's execute. Didn't worry about the outcome at all. Just worried about the task at hand. And I'd love to tell you that I just knew by looking in Joe's eye that we were going to win. I didn't. I never checked Joe's eyes to see if we thought we were going to win. It didn't matter. It was just about the moment and executing and doing your job. And then, the results take care of themselves. I mean, that play where we tied it up, that was a great play, but it was, I don't know if it was great offense or if it was bad defense. The bottom line is we executed and they didn't. But I do think it was symbolic of our team. Our team that year, we had our share of adversity with injuries. We had a losing streak in December, which nobody ever wants as you're going into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But we just kept fighting, and we overcame all of it.
If you get a chance to see a clip of that play, you'll see Matt Birk make 2 key blocks. He forces the nose tackle to the right and towards another blocker. He next keeps Von Miller from getting to Joe Flacco as Flacco steps up in the pocket and launches the ball downfield. After seeing that, I asked Matt about his own personal role on that play.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you it's some great play by me, but obviously it's not. You just do what you're trained to do, nothing more, nothing less. And in that particular look, they're only rushing 3 guys. You don't vacate your area. You maintain they call it the depth of the pocket so the quarterback can step up. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've been in that similar situation, I don't know, a million times in my career. So that's why you practice so much. That's why you do all those reps in practice. That's why you go do all the meetings. That's why you do all the mental reps. Just so when these opportunities come up or these situations come up, you're not thinking. You're just reverting back to your training. And fortunately, I was there, and Joe stepped up, and he knew what he wanted to do with the ball, and he delivered.
The Ravens beat the Broncos with a field goal early in the second overtime and moved on to Foxborough to play the New England Patriots in the 2012 AFC Championship game. The Patriots led 13-7 at halftime. And here's something that people don't talk about much, or maybe they've forgotten. The Baltimore Ravens outscored the Patriots 21-0 in the second half of that game. That's at New England in the AFC Championship game. Remarkable performance by the Baltimore Ravens to get to the Super Bowl. And the Ravens completed their Super Bowl journey with a 34-31 victory over the San Francisco 49ers in Super Bowl 47. It had truly been a long road overcome by perseverance and grit. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Game Before the Money podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. It's free to do. You can also listen at thegamebeforethemoney.com. Podcast transcriptions are also available at thegamebeforethemoney.com and are located in the podcast notes section. Transcriptions are powered by our transcription partner, Sonix. It's Sonix. Music and sound effects are produced by 11 Productions. Yeah.